Hello, dear students. This is the third part of Thomas Gray's poem Elegy written in a country churchyard. And in this video, I am going to explain the remaining poem. And this stanza starts with the lines, as you can see on your screen, that perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hence that the road of empire might have swayed or waked to ecstasy the living lyre. Here in this stanza, the poet is talking about the people who are laid in the unmarked graves. The graves are unmarked, there is no trophies or tombstone on the tombs because these people belong to a very poor community and their families don't have enough wealth to grave any tombstone or any epitaph on their graves, so these graves are unmarked. And the poet is saying that perhaps in this neglected spot here refer to the grave, and the poet is assuming, and the poet trying to guess that perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire. Celestial fire here is a metaphor used for passion. So the poet is convincing himself that maybe there is laid a person whose heart was once full of passion to write something, hence that the road of empire might have said, or maybe there is living a person whose hands have the courage to run an empire or waked to ecstasy the living lyre, or maybe there is someone laying here who has the potential to play a lyre and to and the skill to play the lyre and make the lyre conscious. Here you can see in the line fourth, living lyre. Living lyre here is related to conscious lyre. Like the poet wants to convey that there may be some of the more talented people who can write some compositions full of passion, and here he is assuming that here some of the person having talent to run an empire so fantastically, and here one can assume that here is living a person who can play the instrument of lyre so passionately, so skillfully, to make as to make the lyre conscious. So here the poet is assuming some of the talents that are laid there. In our next stanza, but knowledge to their eyes her ample page, rich with the spoils of time, did never unroll. Chill penury repressed their noble rays and froze the genial current of the soul. Students, this stanza is somewhat tricky because here we have to connect line number 1, that is but knowledge, to end portion of line number 2. Like you will read this stanza like I am going to read, but knowledge did never unroll. So you will take the word knowledge as subject, and the predicate part belongs from the second line, second last phrase of second line, like but knowledge did never unroll her ample page. You will come again at the first line and you will read it like this, but knowledge did never unroll her ample page. And now we will again come to the second line, her ample page, rich with the spoils of time to their eyes. So here the poet wants us to convey a message that there are the person to whom knowledge never did unroll its ample page. Means the poet is trying to say that there are some people lying here whose knowledge is not so solid, because they don't know anything about the history, and so their knowledge is very little. But knowledge did never unroll her ample page, rich with the spoils of time. Here, spoils of time means the accounts of time. So the poet is trying to say that there may be there may be lying some person whose knowledge is very little, because knowledge itself never unroll its plenty of accounts to these people. Why did this happen? The poet is giving answer in third and fourth line. The poet is saying that chill penury repressed their noble rays and froze the genial current of the soul. Here the poet is giving the reason that why the people have less knowledge about history or about anything else, because chill penury repressed their noble rage. Penury means poverty, because here the poet gives a reason that poverty has repressed their noble passions, at even their rage, even their anger is also repressed, oppressed by their poverty, and froze the genial current of the soul. Here the poet is personifying penury, and he is saying that penury has frozen their passion, that is that was lying in their soul. The penury made poverty made their passion repressed, and penury made their passions froze. Here you can see in line number third, penury is personified, and in line number 4 the poet is using a metaphor, like you can see the poet is saying that froze the genial current of the soul. Here the poet is using uh, soul as river and passion as current of that river. Let's move to our next stanza. Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of ocean bear. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air. Here I would like to present some of the information about this stanza. Here you can see that this stanza is starting from the phrase full many. It is a phrase used in 18th century, and its meaning is lots of. And this stanza is about unsung heroes of past. These lines, like full many a gem of purest ray serene, full many a flower is born to blush unseen, these lines are quoted also in the work Emma by Jane Austen in her novel. So here is some brief information about the phrase and about the relevance of these lines. In these lines the poet is, as I have told you, that in these lines the poet is speaking about the unsung heroes of the past, the unsung forefathers who are laid in their graves now. So the poet is saying that full many a gem of purest ray serene. Poet is comparing their talent, and he is saying that in this world there are lots of gems which are so pure and so and which are so pure, and they are hidden under the dark caves of ocean, and the caves are also unfathomed. Unfathomed means they are never discovered by anyone. These caves are under the ocean, and these caves are dark and unfathomed also. So there are many gems who are not to not in the presence, in the knowledge of the real world. In next line he is saying that full many a flower is born to blush unseen and waste its sweetness on the desert air. Likewise the gem, there are also many flowers which born to blush, but they are unseen, and because of their unseen presence, they waste their sweetness in the desert air. So here the poet is comparing the example of gem and some blushing flowers to the rude forefathers of that hamlet, of that village. Our next stanza starts with these lines: some village Hampton that with dauntless breast the little tyrant of his fields withstood. Some mute inglorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. In this stanza also, the poet is giving us some some examples from history, and in line number 1 of this stanza he is speaking about John Hampden, who was born in 1594 and died in 1643. He was the man who refused to pay the ship money which Charles I demanded without the authority of the parliament. In line second, the word T, the letter T of the word tyrant is capital, and here it is used for King Charles I. In line number 3 he is speaking about Milton, and in line number 4 he is again speaking about speaking about a very important personality of history, that is Oliver Cromwell. So first of all, you should know about all of these are like John Hampden was a Puritan politician who opposed the policies of King Charles I. He refused to pay a tax that he thought unfair. Milton, tyrant, here the word tyrant refer to King Charles I. And in third line, Milton, as you all know, you are all students of English literature and you know that Milton was a very famous poet in English literature. Here he is using a phrase mute inglorious Milton, means he wants to convey us that someone lying here with a poetic talent like Milton's, but who has not had the opportunity to express it or to win fame and glory. In line number 4 he is speaking about Oliver Cromwell. Oliver Cromwell was the leader of the anti-royalist during English Civil War, helped bring about the execution of King Charles I, and became head of the short-living English Commonwealth in 1649 and 1660. One of the important factors related to this stanza that Hampden and Milton both belong to England, and the church where the poet is sitting in present in this poem, that church is also in England. So here the poet is speaking about the personalities that maybe there was someone who would have wreaked as much havoc as Cromwell, but who didn't have a chance. So we will read the stanza again. That some village Hampden that with dauntless breast means with more courage. Here the poet is again assuming that here in these graves some of the people like John Hampden, who has more courage and more strength to oppose a tyrant of his fields, withstood. Some mute inglorious Milton here may rest. He is again assuming that here some of the personalities like Milton, but these personalities having although they are having poetic talent like Milton, but they had not had the opportunity to express it or to win fame and glory. Cromwell, guiltless of his country's blood, and here again he is giving us an example of Oliver Cromwell, who made English Commonwealth in 1649 to 1660. So here the poet is speaking about these world famous personalities, and he is assuming that these forefathers of this village, they didn't get the chance to be famous like Milton, Cromwell, Hampden. That's why they are buried here unknown. In our next stanza, the applause of listening senates to command, the threads of pain and ruin to despise, to scatter plenty over a smiling land, and read their history in a nation's eyes. Here, all of you are directed to to notice that in this stanza, line number 4 is not ends. Line number 4 is not ending with a full stop, rather, it is ending with comma. So, this indicates that here the poet is using enjambment, and in enjambment, two stanzas are linked by any sentences, like in this stanza we can't study this stanza alone, and we have to study the next stanza with it. Their lot forbade, nor circumscribed alone their growing virtues, but their crimes confined, forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne, and shut the gates of mercy on mankind. Here we will first of all we will read line number 65, that is next stanza's first line, and after that the sequence of reading the stanza will be like this: their lot forbade. First of all we will take out this phrase from line number 65, and after that we will read the previous stanza. Their lot forbade the applause of listening senates to command, the threads of pain and ruin to despise, to scatter plenty over a smiling land, and read their history in a nation's eyes. So, our subject of this sentence will be their lot forbade. Here, the poet wants to say that their fortune forbade them to get the applause of commanding the Senate. Their destiny forbade them to feel the pain or to feel the despise, the threads of pain and ruin to despise. Their lot forbade, again we will use the subject here, and we will continue to read the lines of previous stanza. Their lot forbade to scatter plenty over a smiling land. Their lot forbade and read their history in a nation's eyes. So now I am going to explain it fully, that in this stanza the poet wants that the main reason of these countryside forefather to be remain here unknown, that their destiny, their lot, their luck forbade them to experience the applause, to experience the commanding authority, to experience the pain of throne, the pain and the ruin to despise, to scatter plenty over a smiling land, and read their history in a nation's eyes. These people's luck or their fortune forbade them to be read in history in nation's eyes, means to be read by the people of these nation. The main factor of behind this unknown behind these unknown graves are that these people were devoid by their luck or their destiny, that they didn't ever felt the applause, they didn't ever felt the pain and ruin, and they didn't ever got read by the history, got read by the people, and they didn't have any name and fame in history of this nation. Now we will again come back to the last stanza of this page. Nor circumscribed alone their growing virtues, but their crimes confined, forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne, and shut the gates of mercy on mankind. Now, in this stanza, the poet is a little optimistic. He is saying that I know, and you all know, he is again directing to the readers that he is addressing to the reader that I know that their luck or their fortune devoid them from the above listed activities, but I think that this their future or sorry their fortune or their luck neither forbade them to experience the above listed thing, but their luck or their destiny also forbade them to commit any crime. Their luck forbade, their luck confined them to do any crime, and not only their luck or their fortune made them devoid of virtues, growing virtues, but also their luck or their fortune confined them to do any illegal crimes, forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne. Here we all know that in politics a throne is achieved only through the path of slaughter of some innocent people, but here the poet wants to convey that although these forefathers are devoid of any fame, name, or power, but also they also confined, they also forbade to do heinous crimes, and also they didn't get any throne, but also they were away from the path of slaughter, and shut the gates of mercy on mankind. Here the poet is again using a metaphor in gates of mercy, and he is saying that their luck not only forbade them to experience some good virtues, but also their luck or their destiny confined them, devoid them to shut the gates of mercy on mankind, and that's why these peoples always experienced the human mercy, and this virtue of mercy was also was always present in their mankind, in their humanity, in their passion. So these were the activities, these were the feelings, these were the paths of success that that the forefather didn't ever experience, they didn't ever get any fame or name, wealth or prosperity, but also there was a plus point of this, there was a positive point of this unknowing unknown graves, that these graves, these rude forefathers, these countryside forefathers didn't ever shut the gate of mercy on the face of mankind. So that's all today for students. All of you are suggested to listen the video carefully and to write the critical comments, and to make notes as I have told you with the explanation of these stanzas. Thank you all.